Dr. Rida Alias, who is going to run the show. Rida, it's your show.
We're going to have with us two panelists, and I think we're going to have an exciting discussion. I would like to call Reg and Faiz to join me on here on the stage so that the lights are not all on me. And what we're going to talk about is something that Tariq introduced in the beginning, which is succession in family businesses. So actually, numbers show that 80% of the family businesses or the family owners think that in 5 years, one of their family members is going to run the company. Yet statistics are not so encouraging. So what we have here is 30% make it to the second generation, 12% to the third, and almost 3% after that. The funny part of it, though, is that if they think they want to leave a legacy, like Tariq said, and not just it's about money, and we know that succession is a breaking point. So actually, what happens? PwC research in 2016 shows that less than 10% have anything that resembles a plan for succession. So I'm going to introduce Reg. The way we're going to play it is as follows. I'm going to introduce Reg, who's a consultant. He's a founding partner of RTS Global. It's one of the biggest companies in the MENA region, right? Africa and East Asia. And they have more than 40 partners in the company. Reg, in the past 10 years, have led and managed 1,600 family board meetings. And just to add to that, he won last year the Disruptive Entrepreneur of the Year award for actually disrupting panels like this one. So I don't know whether we're going to do that today, but he won the award for his impact on family businesses and for his innovative business model in the service sector. And as a surprise, we actually got his book on family business DNA. So we don't talk about DNA only in families. They are also in family businesses. I'm going to leave the floor to Reg for 10 minutes, and then we're going to ask him a few questions. Then I will introduce our next panelist, who's going to challenge us a little bit. Hello, actually.
Well, thank you very much for the lovely introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's important that to set the stage with maybe some of the things I'm going to share is based on hands-on practical experience of working with about 112 families to date. So anything from a father and son, small, medium-sized enterprise, a bit like some of the data we saw earlier, up to 53 family members in one conglomerate, and some of the challenges that have come up as a result of working with these clients. So I'm not going to talk about theory, is that okay? I'm going to share some stories and some case studies. So picture this, let's set the stage. I walk into the first board meeting, family board meeting, and there's 11 family members around the table. As soon as I walk in, one of the senior members in the top left corner of the boardroom stands up and says, Reg, I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad that the family have finally decided to use an outside professional to look into our family business with a different perspective. Because hopefully they'll listen to somebody now. Listen to the words. Hopefully they'll listen to somebody now. What's he really saying? What he's really saying is nobody listens to me. That was his opening line. Then he got up, a bit more energy, and he said, by the way, can you let me know once the entire business has been valued and when there's going to be a check ready for me? Because this is my first and my last meeting. Thank you. And he walked out the room. The reason I share this is sometimes we talk about governance and policies, and we overdo it. You could have the best family constitution in the world, but it doesn't mean you're going to build a legacy. You could have the best documents, the best governance plan, framework, but it doesn't mean that that business is going to move from one generation to the next. It's not guaranteed. Why is that? Because in that situation with that gentleman, when he left, the rest of the family members started talking behind his back. Reg, he's always been threatening us with these things. He's not serious. I said, that's not what he said. He also used the words dissolve the partnership just before he left. I said, your family business has been around since 1926. Are you ready for what he just said? Your reputation is solid in the marketplace as a family name. Are you ready for what's going to happen next? I said, he didn't wake up last night and said, I'm out. What's been happening for that family member has been brewing inside himself emotionally, month after month after month, year after year, to get to the stage where he's at now to say, I'm out. So are any of you actually listening to him and understand what's really going on for him? They said, so what do you suggest? I suggest we work together for 12 months. We take the big onion in your family and we delayer every skin of that onion until we get to the core and find out why he's feeling this way. By the way, it took 3 years with that family to do their family constitution. Why? Because of the underlying issues. But once they were resolved and they signed their family constitution and the governance started to kick in, that family are together today, united, and 8 next generation family members have joined since. But it was very easy in that room to go, split, time to move on. So I'm very passionate about this subject because I believe you've got to get the balance right between hardcore governance and processes, systems and documents, but also with the emotional and the human capital and DNA part of what's happening in the family business. So I hope that sort of kicks off maybe a debate.
We know what DNA, almost, I don't know. But we can imagine what DNA in family is. What is it in family business?
So when I talk about DNA in family businesses, what I'm essentially talking about is everyone's built differently. All of us in this room have our own unique DNA of our strengths and weaknesses. Would you agree? So when you take 3 family members or 5 family members in one family, and you take all of them combined, you have something very unique in that family. There's no such thing as copy and paste in a family business. You can't speak to one consultant who's worked with one family and copy and paste what one family have done and apply it to another. Because every family is unique because of the melting pot of all those personalities and thoughts and strengths and weaknesses that come together. So let me give you some examples. One of the models, which is in the book actually, and I've been talking about for 15 years now, is understanding the different profiles of each family member. So I'd like to, in 60 seconds, give you a 4-hour masterclass. Are you ready? Okay. So I'll go really quick. So these are some of the profiles that we discuss with families. Number 1, the innovator profile. The innovator profile in a family business is someone who is constantly coming up with new ideas all the time. If you try have a board meeting with this person and there's an agenda of 10 things to go through, you're lucky if you get to number 3. And they'll derail you with 16 new ideas. Know anyone like that? Yeah, a few hands going up. These people love starting things, inspire people very quickly, but keep changing their mind. They're very impatient, and it's very difficult to get their focus. If they come to the office every day, they will confuse everyone in the organization. They need their own office outside of the main headquarters. If they come to the office, yeah. So that's one profile. Another one is what we call the planner profile. This is somebody who has a tremendous attention to detail. They love multiple projects. They love getting involved in strategic thinking, developing something, designing something. But then they also get bored. And they need to be stimulated with multiple projects on a regular basis. Then you've got what we call the promoter profile. This is someone in the family who loves the limelight. They love the public domain. Presenters, marketeers, politicians. These are people where they come to life when the audience is in front of them. Then they get bored and move on to the next group of people. If you leave this person in the office every day, they will sabotage relationships with people because of their ego. Okay? It needs space. So they need to be in the public promoting your brand, your product, or your service. The next one is the connector profile. This is someone who does things with their heart first. They love relationships. They'll spend 2 hours talking to someone and you say, did you achieve your objective? They go, you know what, I forgot to ask them what I was meant to ask them. But they love being around people and relationships. They remember someone's spouse's name, the dog's name, people's birthdays. They give people gifts on a regular basis. Then you've got the mentor, someone who has a thirst for knowledge, very good one-to-one or with groups of up to 20 people. They're the most patient in developing and coaching other people. But as soon as your company is 100 employees or 200 employees, that person now gets frustrated because there's a lot more chaos in the organization. The next profile, operator DNA profile, the dictator. Masterful at delegating things out and getting the job done. People may not like this person, but they respect them because they get things done. The larger the environment, the more problems and more issues in the company, the operator comes to life. If you give them a blank piece of paper and an empty shell, the operator doesn't know what to do. Give them chaos, they need to fix something, they come to life. Then we've got a negotiator profile, all about show me the money. They make sure the till rings. Very impatient, they don't care what happened last month, they don't care what's going to happen next month, it's all about 5 o'clock today. They're pushy, they can be a bit of a rebel, they rub people up the wrong way, but they're very fast with their numbers and love the financial transactional situation. They love buying and selling, getting a signature on a contract, getting closure. They've never paid full price for anything in their life. They probably negotiated their marriage as well and made a profit. Then you've got the banker profile. Once the money starts coming in, they're very good at checking the numbers and counting money all day long. They can give you all the information that you need. But if you ask them, what should we do with the money? The banker says, I don't know. But they're very, very good at making sure all the numbers are absolutely accurate so others can make a decision. And finally is the investor. The slowest decision maker out of the 9 profiles. They like to do research, gather their data, and always make long-term decisions. So picture this. I was in Dubai recently. We profiled a family, and the father was an innovator, promoter profile. Constantly coming up with ideas, loves the limelight, very good with PR. He's very concerned about his son. He says, I don't think my son can really take over from me. When I profiled the son was an investor banker profile. Complete opposite to his father. His son needed time to make decisions. He needed research, information. The father didn't need any of that. He was ready, good to go as soon as he had an idea. His father knew everybody, in the region and very good, strong with his PR. His son was an introvert. He would never want to stand up in front of a group of people in public. So his father's succession plan was thinking of his son to be as good as him. But when we did the profiles and shared the profiles with both of them, the father eventually had a tear come down. And he said, Reg, I feel really bad because I've had this expectation that he needs to be like me. And in reality, he's a person who should be a board director in the future who manages our money for the long term. What I really need to do is find a CEO as a professional who I can bring into this business, but not burden my son with that responsibility and force him into a succession plan to take over from me. And in that moment, both father and son had a breakthrough and an aha moment as a family. I'll pause there. Hope that helps. Okay?
Okay, it seems I'm from the ones who changed their minds. So I'm changing my mind about how we're going to run this session. And I'm going to introduce my next panelist because I think he has something to contribute to the discussion. Fayez Rasamni is our next panelist. He's a member of the Young President Organization Lebanon chapter. He was the chapter chair, the education officer, the membership officer. He's also the member of the Executive Education Alumni Committee at London Business School. What you don't know about Fayez is that he is the CEO and chairman of RIMCO, right? But what is surprising is that he got his CEO-ship on a silver platter. I'll leave it for him to tell you how he got it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Actually, I relate to everything you've said. It was really interesting. And for this question, I need maybe 10, 15 minutes, so you will hear the conclusion at the end, whether I had it on a silver plate or not. Let me introduce first the family business and how it all started. I'm the third generation family member. The first generation went to Africa, Liberia. The eldest of the first generation went there at the age of 14 years old, and then followed by his siblings. It was a tough journey back then. I sat with them many times, telling me their stories. It took them like 2 months to get there. They started from almost nothing. Actually, they went. They didn't have money to continue their journey, and they had to take some debt to reach Liberia. And then from there, I will try to be brief about how it all started. And then they went to Liberia, and then they did extremely well. They were 5 siblings, and actually they had all the 9 characters among them. And if you ask me who was the CEO back then, no one was the CEO. They actually, the 5 of them were one person. You had the banker, you had the visionary, you had the doer, you had the PR guy. All of them were always sitting in one office, of course, sometimes shifting into regions, and they created out of their journey really a true empire. They went to trading, they had petrol station, they had automotive dealerships, brands like Palmolive, Colgate. After like 30, 40 years in Liberia, they decided to come back to their home country like any Lebanese who leaves this country, and they invested in lands. And from the land, they created like a refrigerator to cater for vegetables and food. And then this land plus the refrigerator became what Remco is today. And for many years, and it is very important to mention it, this business was accounting for heavy losses and subsidized by the African business. So here comes the second generation. Let me say the first was 5 members, second generation around 22 members, and third generation around 48 members. The second generation came into the business, they came to the African business, and I need to be very honest about it. The African business lasted maybe 10 or 15 years, and everything in Africa went to nothing, from an empire to nothing. And then all what we had is Lebanon, and meanwhile, many tried to invest in many other businesses in Europe and in the USA, and none of them really created another business that is sustainable. So this is the story of the second generation. But I need to mention, it's not the mistake of the second generation, it's beyond that, because we cannot blame them for that. They were given too much power without really control, without any control or systems to manage that. So I came here, third generation. I'm the eldest of the third generation, and I've got 47 cousins. When I first joined the company, I didn't really want to join the company. And let me be clear about it. I really didn't want to join the family business. Too much disputes. It wasn't really a healthy environment to join at a young age. But I had to. My father passed away at a young age. I don't have any uncles, and I think I'm lucky. I don't have uncles. And I went in because my aging grandfather was he was 83, 84, so I had to come in. Really, I didn't have a choice, to put it this way. So I went into the business. Of course, I didn't meet with any HR. I just chose my spot because no one really cared if I'm coming or not. I chose my spot, and I chose the credit and collection department, which was really not managed, and no one really took care about it. It's not too flashy. It's not about sales. You're not interacting with, actually you're dealing with issues, problems, collecting money. So I went there, and from there I discovered that honestly this company they did very well because the 5 were workaholic and they knew exactly what to do, the 5 siblings. And we were driven by momentum, because when you have a positive environment, you're selling cars and you're earning interest. Banks were not available back then. I remember only HSBC used to lend money, and we used to do our in-house financing. So basically, we were not a car company. We were a financing arm and a car company. And this is how the company went on and on. what scared me when I went to the credit and collection department, I discovered that if we continue like this, then we will have issues. On the short run, the momentum will create profits and will drive us through. But going forward, then we have an issue, a cash flow issue, because we're having a lot of debt in the market, and we're assuming that we will always sell as well as before. But you never know what would happen in the future, and then we have an issue. And this is why I was a bit concerned, and I couldn't see who was the CEO back then, because the first generation were aging, too many second generation in, they were around 13 directly or indirectly interfering in the business. So this is when I went to the first generation, backed by a few members of the second generation, and I told them, you know what, I think we need to get someone from outside to run the business. Let's move to this stage and get someone, independent CEO, to run the business, because I think this is the only way to sustain the business. And they actually agreed. And to mention, at this stage of time, we were listed. We went public in 97. So basically, we were listed, and this company was run like this by really the first generation, 3 members back then, 13 second generation. So it was a bit chaotic, and they accepted. The first generation accepted, and we got an independent director who stayed with us for 7 years. And after 7 years, I'll go through the details afterwards. After 7 years, I knew that my only way to, because I didn't have experience, I truly believe in experience, and this is why I accepted and to be an employee, a regular employee in the business, reporting to the CEO. I was then sales director for many years, and it was a very tough period for me because I was perceived as the owner. I was perceived by everyone, the owner, and actually I'm being treated as a simple employee. It was a bit tough, but I knew that the experience I'll get out of this experience will get me through. Was it easy? Did I think of quitting? Yes, of course. Many times, 3 times I thought of quitting because it was too much on me. I wasn't happy at home. I wasn't happy at work, but I knew that the business is doing well. So, and I'm gaining experience the hard way. And we went on for 7 years, but during the 7 years, I said my only way is to buy shares. I actually inherited 5% of the company, only 5%. And with my siblings, we were 15. So in no way I can control this business. And I need to align with other family members, with all these characters among them. So it was quite impossible to align with anyone. So honestly, when you have a vision, when you have a target, doors do open. Doors do open. And so many doors open by letting me buy shares. And I didn't have enough cash to buy shares. We sold, along with my brother, we sold some lands, we bought shares, and then I leveraged. The remaining was a huge debt on my shoulder to buy majority. And that is still there. So now I need to really do well in order to pay the debt and in order to prove my CEO position. So this is in a nutshell what really happened throughout this now 15 years of work.
So you didn't have it on a silver platter.
Let them decide.
What do you think? Buying his own company to run it. Okay, so Reg, what do you think about what happened? Do you have any question for Faith?
My mind is buzzing with lots of things from that case study. I suppose the first thing that popped into my head is, should family members take on board senior positions within the organization? Yes, no. When's a good time to bring in a professional, an outsider? Is coming up for me as a question. How should you groom the next generation if you're looking at a succession plan to bring them into one of those roles? So those are things that are popping into my head straight away. Maybe I can share one case study as well, different path. So the father approaches me, he said, Reg, I've got one son, one daughter. The daughter's getting married into another family. She's going to be well looked after. They also have a family business. And I would like to, as part of my assets, gift her a couple of properties. as my daughter. I don't want to wait until I die. I want to do it now, and so she's looked after for the rest of her life. But now, in terms of succession and legacy, I have my one son, and I'm really concerned. He's 26 years of age. He's graduated. He's got some work experience from outside. I've had 3 heart surgeries, and I don't think I can keep doing this every day. He goes, I come to work every day. I am the managing director, and everything lands on my lap. I am firefighting every single day in my business. Anybody here firefighting every day in your business? Show of hands. So you can relate to this. So imagine he's dealing with this every day, and he's had 3 heart surgeries. He's then got a 26-year-old son, and he says to me, I don't think my son is competent enough to handle what we've built. In fact, if I drop dead tomorrow and he takes over, people are going to, I won't use the words that he said to me that day. He used a very different word. But he said, I don't think my son's going to be able to survive. And people are going to do all sorts of things to him to ruin this legacy. What do I do? So within a period of time, we created a 3-year program. So here's the first tip I'm going to give you. A really good succession plan will take you a minimum of 3 years. Minimum 3 years. Do not expect it to happen within 6-9 months and think, oh, great, I've handed over to somebody. But at the same time you have a succession plan, the senior member of the family also needs a retirement plan or a transitional plan. If the senior family member doesn't have in parallel their plan, they may give up their business with one hand to the next gen, but with the other hand, they will still keep putting their finger back in the business. Why? Because if they don't have a renewed purpose, and they have got habits of coming to the office every day for the last 30 years, how will they possibly give that up? They want to with this hand, but they can't with the other. So both of these strategies have to run in parallel, and it takes a good 3 years from my experience, sometimes even 5. So with the son, we built a 3-year program, and we did the following things. So I want to give you some tips for those of you thinking of your next generation. And we maybe link it back to this great case study of family member or professional in this case. We promoted the son to CEO. The managing director was then referred as the chairman. The father thought I was mad. He said, Reg, what? You want to give my 26-year-old son the position of CEO? I said, yeah. I said, but he's not going to act as a CEO. He will just have a designation. What we're going to do is hire 3 professionals around him. They're going to be A-class, people who've got 25, 30 years experience each. And we did that. We hired a CFO, we hired a COO, and a head of sales director. And the CEO, the next generation member, had to learn from these 3 over 3 years. The idea was to get everything out of their head and learn from them how a professional business runs. But they will also give you the respect as a CEO, so over time you'll earn that position. Today, that young man, he's now 32 years of age, so it's always 6 years or so, and he manages a $300 million business. The good news is it took 1 year to implement this, and the father started taking 6 weeks off every 2 months. We called it 2 weeks in 2 months. He would only show up in the office 2 weeks every 2 months. So what did he do with the rest of the time? He traveled the world and had fun. Because he's an entrepreneur, every time he traveled, he came across a new business idea, came back to his son and said, there you go, I've just signed a new franchise with this company. What? He goes, it's not my problem, it's your job role, you're the CEO. And the father now has found new purpose in his life to take time out and enjoy himself and not have another heart surgery. But at the same time, he's bringing new ideas back to the business where his son now has completely taken over. So those are a few things I wanted to share, maybe as another case study, and maybe get your views with professionals now. Yeah.
So I want to go back to Faiz from what Reg is saying. So Reg, I think there is a self-selection bias here because the people who come to you are the ones who want to relay the business. But I think there is, what you've said, is the emotion of want to let go but don't want to let go. Like we've seen this in big companies like Tata Car, where Ratan Tata left and then gave it to a professional, then took it over. Starbucks, we had the same story. So, Faiz, have you felt this emotion? Like, you didn't have one CEO from the first generation, right? As far as I understood. But did you have this not letting go feeling prevent or is a barrier against succession?
Myself, if I...
Not you, but in your succession in the company. So what happened?
No one wants to let go. Really, no one wants to let go. Everyone wants, especially in a country like Lebanon, where you see everyone. So it's ego plays a big role, and everyone wants to have a say, and they want to say that they are the person in charge. So no one wants to let go. This is a very difficult and tricky challenge that we had to face. Let me just talk about, because I went fast. You know, if the independent CEO came, non-family CEO came, and honestly, if he embraced the values, because this is very important, and I don't blame but you know, there are values in family business, and you've got values and culture, and the CEO should be aware. Can I embrace it or not? If they cannot embrace it, they cannot do the job. Values, small details, really. So many years. If I multiply five members of the family times 65 years of work, 325 years of hard work, they will not let go easily. They will enjoy sitting on the side, going 2 weeks, 3 weeks of vacation, coming up with idea. But they need to make sure that this one person who manages the business takes into consideration the value that they've built. And this is a key point. So any CEO that can take this into account will last many years. And we've seen so many CEOs that lasted so many years and turned the business from nothing to billion-dollar business.
I'd love to add to that. I think what you're getting here is some really valuable tips, and it's listening to these very carefully. If you're hiring a professional, a couple of tips. Number one, don't hire someone who is like you. Number two, make sure that they share your values. When you're assessing them, spend more time on their values first, and then assess whether the performance fit is right for your organization. It's valuable. So let's test this out, shall we? If we could kindly take the second row here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, 7 people, and pretend you're all from one family. Is that okay? Just play a game for us. If I use the word respect, okay? If you had a CEO hired tomorrow morning, what would that CEO need to do consistently with their behavior for you to go, there's good respect here? Is that okay? What would the CEO need to do consistently for you to go, there is respect here? We'll start with this gentleman here first. Just quick response to that. Proper treatment, thank you. We'll go on to the next. Respecting the colleagues and the clients and the employees, madam. Reporting, okay. Good listener. Professional integrity. Proper communication. Okay, so you only got 2 people in this entire row that agree with each other. But here's the point. What he's saying is very, very deep, and it requires a thorough understanding. The first thing is, as a family, you have to know what your values are. And if you know your values, how should they show up? If all 7 of you have a different blueprint of how respect shows up, and now you're interviewing a CEO, you're all looking at the CEO with a different lens. So there has to be some commonality first with your values as a family. And then once you all agree on how respect shows up, when you're interviewing the CEO, you're all clear on exactly what you're going to be looking for. Otherwise, you could get the hire wrong. How many of you have ever interviewed someone before they were brilliant in the interview? You hired them, and then 2 months later realized this person's personality is completely different to the person that you interviewed 2 months ago. What happened? Many things, have been done in the wrong way with that assessment. Sorry, I was just linking that to values.
With this,
so let's say, the business right now is doing really well and financially cash flow positive. There's wealth that's being created, but the father is an innovator promoter profile. You may not need the innovator promoter profile, you need more of an operator banker profile. So sometimes the person you're looking for complements you. You may go from in the business to being on the business. Yeah, you started off day-to-day operationally, but you've made the transition to being on the business as a board director. You're still going to get your monthly reports and your dashboards, and you'll be involved in special projects. But the person who's going to be involved day-to-day is not going to be like you. And therefore, you're complementing each other with that transition. Does that answer your question, sir? Great.
I have a question for you, Fayed. In theory, this looks very interesting, to agree as a family on the values and then select the external hire. Going back a few years, when you have promoted the external hire, the professional management, would you have been able to do this, given what was going on in your family business? Yes.
Of course not. And I was sure about it, and until this date, I would have taken the same path. Nothing would have changed. I truly believe in experience. I truly believe you could be a brilliant kid going to Ivy League's university, IQ of I don't know what. You know what? This is 30%. This is 30% of a person's characters. The experience is 70%. And when I say experience, is no less than 8 to 10 years of experience, being, earning it the hard way. And I will talk about it now. And up to 8 years, I would have, if I had managed the company at the age of 24, I'm not sure the company would be there. Unless, there are always exceptions. Sometimes if you've got lots of systems in a company and very good managers, you can do mistakes and you can surf ahead. But if there are no systems in the company, then any mistake you do in experience, you would really fail very hard. Let's take, for example, it's not related to family business, and I'm not talking here politics, but let's take, for example, what's happening in the USA now. You've got the president that is perceived a bit different, if I may say. But the system is correcting him. All his allies are being fired one after the others, and he couldn't do anything about it. Everything he said he wanted to before that, he didn't do anything about it. The system was stronger than him. So once you have a system in a company, then you could take more chances.
I want to tell the audience, if you have a question, please raise your hand. Someone has the mic? Okay, so we have someone with the mic. We're going to keep talking unless you interrupt us, which seems it's immediate. So let's take a question, and then we'll keep going, and then another question.
By the way, I was just asked, we were just talking there briefly about if I disagree or not. We were saying it's good for us to so I'm challenging something. Another case study, a son in the business, recently joined, been there for 3 years, did not have the 8-9 years experience. He says, Raj, I'm working harder than all of the other family members. I should be paid more money. My salary should be higher. They're all lazy. They're all playing golf twice a week. Number one. Number two, I don't think I want to be in the family business 10 years to get a senior position. I think I want to be an entrepreneur. So what do you do in that situation? I can give you the answers, but it's for you to think about, and maybe we'll get some good Q&A from this.
Of course. Yeah. Let's start with the first question.
Hi, John Zakka. Actually, I want to thank you for the interesting cases and all the interesting discussions, but you've raised too many interesting points, so I've had to take notes of all the questions I want to raise to Reg and to Faiz. So first of all, I want to go back to Reg's initial discussion. You were talking about family governance or family constitution. So what happens when a family member who signs that constitution then does not uphold his agreement? Because as you know, in family businesses, emotions tend to go up and down every day. People change their minds. So that is a possibility to happen. And Faiz, you mentioned that the company went public in 1997. And that was probably a decision accepted by Generation 1, but there is probably someone else who triggered that action to be taken. So I wonder how come they accepted, number one, and number two, for what reason did you go public, considering there was still this chaos going on, as I've understood, within too many siblings in the business? Thank you.
So I'll go with the first question. I think, first of all, I think it's important to understand what we mean by governance. How many feel governance here is all based on having a family constitution? Show of hands. Let's get an idea of interpretation. Because how many of you feel shareholders' agreement is part of governance? Okay. How many feel that is all together, it's all part of the same thing? Okay. So these are things that come up a lot, there's confusion. There's so many elements, and Rita and I were talking about this last week, and I sent some documents to you, because you can't do it in this session very quickly. For me personally, there's 30 different elements to governance. 30 different elements. So let's take a family constitution as one of them. First of all, I would not sign a family constitution with the entire family unless I know there's absolute buy-in from every single person in that family. Too many families get family constitutions signed and they're premature. Not enough one-to-one time has happened with all the family members to get true buy-in. But let's say there's buy-in and you sign, and then what? When it comes to the clause of not adhering to things and the code of conduct, or not meeting the family values, the question is what happens, and is that dictated in the family constitution? Who can they go to get support? Where do they go to get coaching? Where do they go to get counseling? How do you sort out disputes? It's very, you can't say from a constitution, oh, you're out of the family. How can you do that? You can be out of the business, but you're not going to be out of the family. So there's a difference between governance linked to family unity in the constitution, loving the family, and there's a different governance of the business. Someone could be out of the business because they're not meeting a certain criteria, but you still love them. You still love them. They're still part of your family. If it's an extreme situation, like Dr. Robert Young, one of my friends in the UK, runs a rehabilitation clinic. He said to me, Reg, 1 in 7 people have an addiction. So have a look at the people on your row and see if you can work out the other 6 or so behind you. I'm only joking. Some people, it's mild, dark chocolate under their pillow every evening. For some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's being a workaholic. So when I was talking to Dr. Robert Young, we were saying that if someone's got an extreme problem, it doesn't mean you stop loving them and saying, you can no longer be part of our constitution and our setup. You have to find a way of resolving it. Sorry, that's a brief response to what you're saying.
To your question, who triggered this listing? This listing is it was one of the members of the second generation who knew someone at back then Middle East Capital Group, and this guy met with the first generation, and they decided to go public. Before that, 3 years. The company was, I'm talking public information, so it's not, the company is, Equity Group wanted to buy this, our company for $12 million, and they refused, and then they went back and they went public. The company was valued back then at around $89 million, and only in a few years, just so, but the question is, were they ready to go public, yes or no? I'm not sure they were ready. Cashing out is really something interesting, but what would you do with that money? Are you ready? If you ask me, would I do it now? let's assume I have the company and I want to go public. I would, yes, if I'm willing to let control out, let some people come in. If I want control and I want the cash, then it's very difficult. You might as well keep it private. But it was interesting, $89 million, 40%. They have cash. They cashed out after so many years. What they did with the money, I don't think they had a plan. They went more into automotive. They got more dealerships. One of them is doing very well now. The other one went bankrupt. So part of the family lost everything. Another part of the family is doing well now.
I'm fascinated by this contrast. So I would like actually to pose a question to both of you. I feel like what Reg is talking about is wonderful, but it's also, I feel like...
So someone's saying at the back they can't hear you, so
sorry.
Just...
It's a contrast. And I feel like, for instance, what Reg is talking about is very rational, very important. And then what I feel like, what Faye is talking about, he's trying to change a tire, especially in business, right? In the business you're in. You're trying to change, a tire on a moving car. Like, you did not have time to sit down and say, is this the right time to go public? It's like, okay, it's happening. So I feel like this contrast, it would be helpful for both of you to address this because, dealing with these family business issues is a lot like that. It's nice to be able to have the time to take a step back and do that, but then a lot of situations more or less happen like that. And I really am keen to hear both of your views.
I won't tell you, in the between, when I first joined in '99 until it's after going public. So just to give you a nuance here, from '99 until 2004, we never sat in a meeting where we really discussed strategy or vision going forward. It was meetings were always structured to handle a situation or try to solve a dispute. We really never had a vision, a vision going forward. Everyone was trying to deal with the day-to-day operation, which is obviously very wrong.
I think for me, if you're a founder or the business is being co-founded with a husband and wife or two brothers and so on, and they're the first generation, a lot of the things we're discussing in this symposium you can put to one side. It's true entrepreneurship, isn't it? You just get on with it. You do your 90, 100 hours a week and you build your business. It's only some of these things become more relevant as you then head to the 15 people or the 47, 48 people, which becomes really relevant now because there's a lot more personalities, there's a lot more involved. So that you have to put into context. Next one I would say is understand clearly what's urgent, critical, and important. There may be certain things going on in the family business today where you need to spend the time right now fixing it, putting a process in place, getting even a one piece of paper signed off with a basic policy to give clarity to the family members. But the bigger picture is you're working on all these things we're talking about today over 3, 4, 5, 10 years and constantly updating it. Some clients come to me who need surgery. Like they want a wand and fix everything right now. But I say to them, you know what? The mess you're in now is because of all the things you didn't do the last 20 years. And you expect me to come with a wand and fix it within a week? But the reason why this is being done today, this symposium, is to create the awareness here in Lebanon where some of you don't need to get into surgery. You may already have a great family, things are working well, but you're putting these things in place now for the future.
Okay. I want to throw it back at you, Reg. You have your own family business. How are you running this?
So I have two aspects to my family business. I have a family office situation with my sister, and then I have my immediate family, which would be my
First or second
wife.
generation?
So the story is as follows. My grandfather was the first generation entrepreneur in India, Punjab in India. And he built a sizable empire an estate in agriculture, property, land, and so on. Unfortunately, in his 50s, he had an accident and passed away. Now, in our family, all the children, the generation to generation is very, very small. So my father was in his 30s, and I was a young boy when my grandfather passed away. My father is the eldest of the second generation. Soon as my grandfather passed away, my father and all of his male siblings went into war with each other over the assets. The reason why is because my father came to the UK from India when he was 13 years of age. The other siblings did not have the opportunity of migrating to the UK. So when my grandfather died, the underlying blockage in the family was jealousy. And because of jealousy, the other brothers wanted more of the estate. And my father, being a stubborn man, said, no way. So this war started. Eventually, when my grandmother got involved to organize all of the estate, you think it's done, but it's not. And I never forget the day as a teenager, my father said to me, your cousins are no longer your cousins anymore. Why? We meet them every year and have fun. No, they're no longer part of our family. So I mention that because something happened in my brain from a young age to be in the business that I'm in now, where 15 years ago I had a moment in my life where I found my purpose, and I decided to reignite and restart the legacy from where my grandfather started. So what we've done is missed one generation and then started all over again. And that's a family office structure. And then with my family, my wife and 4 children, we've been putting these things in place from a young age. So the question I've got for you, when's the right time to bring your next generation into succession plan and family constitution and planning? My answer is before the age of 7. I have 100 case studies on this. The more you get the next generation before the age of 7 involved in your conversations, you positively put something into their subconscious. Like the grandfather walking around with his grandson in the manufacturing plant. Or one of the sons or daughters coming to a board meeting and playing in the chair and scribbling some notes. They don't know what's going on, but they're just watching. My 8-year-old daughter, when she was, well, she's 16 now, but when she was 8, I sent her to a conference with me and she did a public speech in front of 600 people in Zayed University in Dubai. That one day changed my daughter's life because she was accompanying me for a speech and had 5 minutes on stage to build her confidence. My youngest son, who's 15 now, from the age of 8, he went to business meetings with me. And the first business meeting he went with me, he said, Dad, next one, can I have business cards like you? Then the one after, he said, can I have a journal which you write in like you? So it's amazing what you can do with the next generation if you allow them to get exposure as part of how we do it in our family.
Can I?
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
I'm your complete opposite here. Complete opposite. Whatever I say is out of my personal experience. I'm not here, every DNA, like you've said, every business, out of my own. Maybe if something is wrong with me, how I'm reacting to all of this. But I will not let my kids come to my office unless I really miss them and I want to see them. They are not, honestly.
So you bring them to the office to see them?
No, to the showrooms. And sometimes they come, I was traveling and I came back but they are not allowed to come. And I didn't know it was so adamant in I don't want them to visit the showrooms, the company and everything. I don't want to anchor their thoughts going forward. Let them be free. And would you ask me, would they get into management? Oh, of course not. Unless really they got their 10 years experience in a multinational company, they proved themselves, and they would be hired as if we are hiring another CEO. But it's out of my mind to have any of my kids for now. Or maybe it could be one of my cousins who's doing extremely well outside and he wants to join. He will be treated and conduct an interview.
So can I ask you a question? This is really good debate. I love this. How many children do you have?
3.
3 children. Let's say they all work outside for 3, 4, 5 years after graduation. And they're thinking about the family business. But they turn around and say, none of us want to join. what happens?
I would be so happy.
So there's no right or wrong here. That's the point. Yeah.
And you have to be ready for that, and you have to groom that. You have to groom everyone in the company that I'm not sure who will control or will manage the company, but you have to get ready for this.
Okay, we have one question from the back, and then we'll have here, then there.
Still
Go
on
ahead.
the question of succession, there are two models that I've seen. One is I call the Saudi model, where the children are thrown in a major bank, and they see how corporate banking is working, and they see balance sheets of banks and how institutions deal with banks. You know, certain sectors of the economy deal with banks, and then those children are sent back into the family business to really understand, how things work. The other is the Dubai model, especially among our Gujarati and Sindhi friends and Marwaris, who will put the children before university in the accounting department, external relations department, before they even move to university, and tell them you will never be an employee at another outside the family business institution. So there's a real appreciation for the family business. Is there an optimal model, a mix of both? For example, one internal, one external, or a certain weighting of those models, given that you mentioned the 7-year-old?
Because of time, maybe I'll keep this one brief. One model that's working really well with a few clients now that we've adopted this in is a hybrid model between, let's go back to the Constitution. The first thing is, do you want them to work outside? Question mark. Again, there's no one size fits all, there's no right or wrong. You have to decide with your family what's going to be your policy and for how long. Because the flip side is if they come and join the family business immediately, and they've graduated already and joined, they will arrive with their Superman outfit and say, Papa, where's my executive office? And next week you don't see them. And you go, where are you? Oh, my best friend was having a wedding in Mauritius. But they didn't tell anybody because they feel they've got this right because they're a family member. So I totally believe in the next generation working outside for a certain amount of time to learn what it's like to be a professional, to clock in, clock out, report into a professional manager. And if they're doing the wrong thing, they get fired. And they should experience that. It's a good thing before they come and join you. Now, when they join you, with some of the families, we've got this policy where they only work in the family business for 1 year. Only 1 year. In the 1 year, they have to learn as much as possible and work in every department in the company over 12 months. So if they're good at finance, that's easy. But if they don't enjoy sales, like we were talking about credit control earlier versus sales, they need to get in the sales van and go out selling with a salesperson for 1 whole month. If they're in supply chain business, they need to know what it's like loading and offloading a vehicle. And not go, hey, I've got a degree from Ivy League school, I'm not prepared to do that. Yes, you are, because you need to get a pulse of what the business is about. And then after the 1 year, what we've done with certain families is we help the next generation member launch their own company. They incubate their own business. Certain percentage of that company is owned by the family group. So they've got the autonomy to be the future CEO of that company. They can be elected with the governance piece to maybe be a family board director of the group company one day, but that's not an automatic right. And the shareholder agreement is completely separate of whether a shareholder or not at this stage. So there are hybrid models like this now that are working to make sure you still attract the next generation. The worry, though, is if you don't attract them, what happens to your legacy?
I have 2 points. The first point concerning incubators, I think the most important stage is how to get the money. If you've got money available and then you have to come up with an idea to make money, I don't think the probability of failing is very high because you skipped a whole stage of life on how to make, saying the first million or whatever. This is the most important part, and this is what makes a person different from any other person. Just coming back to close this point. Concerning, I just want to mention that only 3 members of the family, we said we were 44 plus 22, 66, only 3 members did not come into the family business, did not even consider the family business. And you know what? Those 3 members now, one of them is here. He's got his law firm in Lebanon and Saudi Arabia. He's doing so well. He's sustaining himself and earning some dividend on the side that he doesn't really think about. It's not a standard, but he's doing so well. 2 others, one of them did so well in the banking industry that he bought around 20-30% of Rimco. So imagine he left and he made so much money outside and he came back to buy just for the sake of buying shares. And I had to buy from him the shares. And the third one as well is an entrepreneur who's maybe doing as well. He's in New York doing very well. So learning from all of this, I allowed myself to give you my conclusion.
Reg, I want to challenge you on one of the points, particularly with regards to upbringing. I feel this is really an extremely interesting point with regards to succession. And it starts very early, whether we like it or not, we're engaged in programming our children in a certain way. And I feel from our own experience, maybe one of the failings we've had is that the family has focused very much on bringing up executives and sons primarily who are interested in being involved in the business. But very little has been done to train the family members to be good shareholders. And I think that's the most critical element for the sustainability of the business. So are there, from the cases that you've seen, are there actionable points, are there ways to keep that in mind when we are dealing with our children?
Yeah, I think the only example I can give you again is from my own family. Every year we have 2 what we call family forums as a family. The first family forum is for 2 days, and our kids have been involved in this from a young age. And all 4 of them look forward to this every year. They can't wait for the family forum. So we normally pick a destination. We always book a hotel boardroom, and the kids love this. Day 1 is one hotel, day 2 is a different hotel. So you have to stimulate the kids, because they like the journey of where are we going tomorrow. We always have a boardroom, and it's formal agenda. And the reason I share this with you is because over the years, we've done our constitution, we've got our shareholders agreement and so on, our family structure. My financials of my company are also shared to all of my kids. So if you speak to the youngest, who's 15 years of age, he will tell you exactly what our P&L and balance sheet is of the company today. So I'm a firm believer in slowly, once you've got the strong foundation, you have to educate them. You have to create that awareness for them. But start as early as you can, in my opinion. It's not about forcing it upon them. You're not forcing them to do anything. You're not even forcing them to join the family business. You're just sharing them with them the building blocks. And so they've got the full education of what all of this means. And God forbid something happens to be tomorrow morning, I know that all 4 of my kids, even if they want to go and do something else, they will all come together united to make sure what I've already started, the legacy continues. And they understand what shareholder agreement is. They also understand there's no equal right of 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. They are clear with the policies of whoever's actively contributing gets most of those shares. The one who's not can get bought out and they can carry on doing whatever they want. This is in our own shareholders agreement, and all 4 of my kids understand that today. And the eldest is 21 years of age. So I hope that gives you a different viewpoint.
Okay. So we have one question up there, and then 2 questions here.
I want to ask Faiz, in our society, usually the CEO, the shareholder, in a family business, they like that their son takes over them. And if the son doesn't want to take over them, how can you convince the parents? And I want to ask Reg, do you think that this child is losing an opportunity?
You know, I'm going to start. Karim asked a very relevant question. You need to educate shareholders, and you need to educate the founders as well. When I said I cannot blame the 2nd generation, I do blame the 1st generation for letting the 2nd generation go in. They should be trained, educated, and groomed, the founders and the shareholders, to take the right decisions in favor of their kids or other relevant decisions.
Could you repeat the question? You said, who's losing out on the opportunity?
Do you think that a child who doesn't want to work in the family business is losing an opportunity?
Are you going to say something? Okay, my opinion, yes. 100% yes. Only because I'm absolutely passionate about family businesses and having unity. Here's my mindset. You ready? I have one client right now that in their constitution they had the following. Whenever a family member joins, they work in the family business for 1 year, and then they have to, you ready for this? Listen carefully. They have to relocate to a new country for the rest of their life. The family will only pull them out if there's an emergency. Then they live in that country, get used to it for 3 years, and then the family will invest in one of two things. They either expand one of the existing businesses in that country, or they launch a brand new venture that they're passionate about in that country. Now it gets better. Within 5 years of starting that business, they must professionalize it and have a CEO or a general manager running everything day to day. So they are now transitioning to being an investor. Now, on behalf of the family, they look for the next opportunity. It gets better. When the next generation after that come in, they cannot choose a country that somebody else has already chosen. Today, that family has gone to 4 generations, has 50 family members in 50 different countries with over 50 companies in their portfolio. If one company goes down, the unity that they have in the shareholder agreement, the way they've built it, means the other 49 will protect that family member. So to answer your question, if you're in it together for the long term and it's not about me, what am I going to get? You're truly thinking about leaving it in a better place for the future, and there's a higher purpose for having a family business, there is power in numbers of being united. But the same way as we were discussing earlier, there's no one size that fits all. If that one son or daughter wants to go and do their own thing, God bless them. Help them to go and do their own thing. But still love them as a family member, even though they could be earning money or creating their own wealth, doing whatever gives them enjoyment.
But as well, there's different regions as well. I'm sure this company is in a huge economy, and they've got unlimited funds to support all of this. But in a country like Lebanon or the Middle East, to a certain extent, the economies are too small to afford this.
Well, they started off very poor
In a huge
to begin
economy.
with.
In a huge economy, or no?
Well, they started in one country in Africa, and now they've expanded all over Africa, Middle East, and Europe. But they started in one country in Africa, in Kenya. So,
Reg?
Okay, we have a question there.
Raj, I want to ask you about your experience in gender discrimination when it comes to succession planning. And actually, I'm part of a family business. I have an older sister and a younger sister. The older one is in the business. My wife is also in a family business where she's the oldest. So we see this, especially in Lebanon and the Middle East. It's as if the females are ruled out automatically. Like Tariq Tene opened his speech saying, I have 3 boys. I don't know if he has daughters, which he didn't mention. Or even when you were mentioning about your family, you mentioned the male siblings. So the ladies were automatically ruled out. I think this is not the case in the West, where they're more open to succession planning. I've met a lot of family businesses in Lebanon that, I mean, they were surprisingly open to the idea of 5th generation, 6th generation, going to the mother, from the mother to the daughter, etc. What's your experience in this, and how do you think, especially in the Middle East, how can we, I mean, evolve this to family members or chairmen being more open?
yeah, to answer your question again, because of time, keeping it brief, is I've got one case study right now where there's 6 daughters and 1 son. As the gentleman said at the back there with Gujaratis or Sindhi families and so on, they're an Asian family. Historically, culturally, it's like a no-go area to pass down to the daughters or have them actively involved in any of the businesses. This particular family is now forced into it because they only have 1 son. And we've realized there's so much potential with the daughters. But looking at other case studies, the world is changing. And it's changing because of the next generation's mindset of how they see the world. From 50, 100 years ago, the traditions are changing. So I'll give you an example. When my father was talking about some assets in the UK that we have, and he was talking about his will with my children, and I have 3 boys and 1 girl. My father was constantly talking about his grandsons. You know what his grandson said to him? What about our sister? Imagine, his grandsons are saying, what about our sister? So the world is changing, the mindset is changing about equality, and that all of them should have the potential to be part of the business. But then you need to look at shareholder rights, which is another discussion about what happens with pass down of shares in the future. And what you're referring as to bloodline and spouses, and protecting the business from that perspective, which is a different conversation. But the first base is, I'd say, encourage more and more females in particular, and spouses, to have a sense of belonging in the family business. If they don't have a sense of belonging, they will whisper to their children in the future and say, don't join the family business. Because they don't have a sense of belonging. And your business will never get to the 4th generation on that basis. So that's my opinion.
I just want to alert you to one thing. We have to say goodbye to Raj in about 8 minutes. He's leaving Lebanon. So we have to take a few more questions and cut it short. But I want to ask Faiz, do you have this problem being anchored in Lebanon as a company with gender discrimination? Like would you give it to your son, to your daughter? How would you go about that?
I believe in equality. I never thought about it this way. It's perfect equality. You know,
Has it been in your family, in the generations to come to
male,
you?
Male, it's always male. No, actually female were never considered even, which is very wrong. But for me, we never had any lady joining the family, ladies from 2nd generation joining the company. It's always the male. But I think, and I'm surrounded with ladies managers in the company, and they do an amazing job. Whether in after sales, weird enough, in after sales we've got 4 mechanical engineers in after sales, and 6 or 7 years ago I thought they won't do it. They will not make it underground with all the male macho men underneath. They did an amazing job, and they are fitting very well, and the men are reacting to them very positively.
I have one question, and then Mariam.
Zaina Nazir, Jardin d'Eden is a family business of 3. My sister, she's a CEO. So I have a question for you, Mr. Faiz. You mentioned that you don't like to bring your kids, and unless it's a personal reason, but I'm just interested to know if the question is, if the reason why. The second question is, how do you feel if they decide not to continue your legacy and to stop? How do you feel? Would you blame yourself that this could have been a reason, or I don't know?
The reason is my personal experience, first of all. Second, the legacy is not my legacy, it's the company legacy. So even if an independent team is running the company with the same values and culture of the company, so the legacy is always there. And second, because they didn't have a choice choosing their father, their mother, I'm not going to enforce even their future career into their life. So let them choose.
Okay, so my question is, don't you think it would be unfair to choose the destination of the next generation? And what if the next generation does not want to continue the legacy of the family business, and they know that if they don't continue, the family business won't go far? So do you think that the next generation should sacrifice in order to keep this legacy going? Or should they just continue what they want to do and just leave it behind? What should we do?
My response to that is, it goes back to what the gentleman said here. You have to come up with a hybrid model where you can create a win-win. So therefore, if you're in the healthcare industry in Lebanon, it's not about forcing your kids to join the family business and be in the healthcare industry. You can still create a family business structure where that child could move to any country in the world and be in a different industry and do something that they're completely passionate about. And that can still be wrapped around into a family business structure. And it's about figuring out, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, it's about figuring out what is the right model for your family. It's not about one size that fits all. If you, as a group, decide that that doesn't fit, then send that son and daughter off to whatever they want to do, but they're not part of that family group. You still love them. They're still part of your family values and your charter and your constitution, but they're not part of the business because they decide to become an actor in Los Angeles in America. Yeah?
Faiz, you talked about your personal experience, and because of that, you don't want your children to come to work or see what's happening. Don't you think you're influencing them in this way? You're pushing them away?
Okay, no, I'm not pushing them away. This is what I think. Let me explain it in a. I just want them not to be anchored, and I think this is the way not to be anchored. Maybe I'm not doing that, but what is important, the prerequisite for me is personally, regardless if it's a family business or the prerequisite is 10 years or 8 years of experience in a multinational. Then they want to come back.
Can I ask you a personal question? You don't have to answer this because it's live. But do you feel because of what you've been through in your journey that sometimes there's a thought at the back of the mind that doesn't, because of what happened, we don't want the kids to experience the same, even though their journey is different to ours? So it's subconscious. I'm just asking.
It could be, but no, because I think they could do. I believe that they could do a better job being outside. I think for now, the economy is too small. They can do. They want to be an architect. He wants to be an architect. She wants to be, a doctor. Let them decide.
Because the reason I'm saying that is if I take my daughter right now has got lots of ideas of what she wants to do for the future. But if I drop dead tomorrow morning, my daughter out of the four is the first one with passion that will say, Dad, I'll make sure that the legacy you've got does continue. So there's a distinction between being an investor or board director, protecting what's being built while still being run by professionals underneath. But that son or daughter is also doing something that they're absolutely passionate about. That's a different conversation as well.
We don't want Reg to miss his flight, so we're gonna take 3 quick questions before you leave. Hossam, Rania, and then go ahead.
I'm here. Right. Yeah, I have a question for you. We've been talking about the inner shell of the family business. I want to talk more about the outer shell of the family business. Do you recommend from generation to generation to keep the same lawyers, bankers, and accountants?
I can't answer that because we don't get involved in that area, but I do believe that everyone has an expiry date. So even with myself, there's some of the clients I've been with for 5-6 years, but we always take a sabbatical or park or take a break. I always actually encourage them to also bring in some other consultants, board advisors. I think it's always good to have a refresh. People get complacent otherwise. And new people can bring something fresh to the table.
Can I just ask, the company talked about the family business where they had different branches opening in different cities, different countries. Was it the same business, same industry opening up or different?
Yeah, very good. I would say about 80% of the businesses around the world are linked to the existing business, which is in manufacturing areas. But then the other 20% or so is brand new industries.
So this is just answering the lady's question and your point of view about your children, that a family member can join the same company, but it depends on what they study at university or whatever. They can divert, but keep same family business, but then divert into something to grow the business. So it doesn't have to be just cars. It could be something related.
We're not taking.
Yeah, I've got one client right now who's in manufacturing, but the son is learning robotic engineering. So when he joins the family business, he's going to launch his own robotic engineering business. But what he's going to learn is we'll support the manufacturing company. Strategic.
Okay, my question, I did the research on crisis management in family businesses in Lebanon, and I had a chance to listen to different kinds of stories, and one of the recurring stories comes to succession and planning or not planning most of the cases for this succession. We had cases of CEOs who had to step up to the plate because they suddenly found themselves ruling. And but one consistent message that I was getting from the people I interviewed for this project is that is there a plan of action, a decision support system checklist that I can use to tell which son or daughter, how can I go forward with succession plan, knowing that they cannot wait for 3 years to come up with this institution, or they have the resources probably to hire a consultant at this
The answer is yes, yes, and yes, and hopefully OSB are going to do some other workshops and masterclasses on this in the future. And there is a checklist.
I think Resha should escort Reg to his.
See, you've only just warmed up and I'm about to go. Why is that?
Exactly, see?
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you so much, Reg, for being with us. Thanks for the book. And I thank God we're in academia, no family business succession issues in that. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for the good questions.